Hi, I'm Bob. We arrive at the final section of Chapter 10. It's about efficiency and equity. We will solve all the exercises in this section and the challenge section. I used the textbook Microeconomics, Theory and Applications with Calculus, the 5th edition by Professor Jeffrey Perloff. An Introductory Microeconomics course can be found in the description below. Let's answer exercise 5.1. Give an example of a social welfare function that leads to the egalitarian allocation in which everyone receives exactly the same bundle of goods. For example, the social welfare function is W equals U1 times U2 times UN, where UI is the individual utility function. It equals Xi times Yi. X and Y are the only two goods in the economy. Social welfare is maximized at the allocation where everyone receives the same bundle of goods. Let's solve exercise 5.2. Suppose that society uses the opposite of a Rawlsian welfare function. It maximizes the well-being of the best-off member of society. Write this welfare function. What allocation maximizes welfare in this society? The social welfare function is as follows. The allocation where one person has all goods maximizes this welfare function. Let's try exercise 5.3. Suppose that society cared only about the welfare of consumers so that it wanted to maximize consumer surplus. The government cannot force firms to produce more than the competitive level. Does competition maximize consumer surplus? Why? If not, what kind of policy would maximize consumer surplus? Competition does not maximize consumer surplus. If the government provides subsidies, consumer surplus can increase. Suppose the competitive equilibrium is E. The consumer surplus is the area of A. After the government subsidizes the firms, the supply curve shifts downward from S1 to S2. The consumer surplus increases to the area of A plus B plus C. If the subsidy is large enough that firms are willing to supply at zero price, the consumer surplus will be the triangle below the entire demand curve. It maximizes the consumer surplus. Let's jump to exercise 6.1. Modify the figure in challenge solution to show how much is sold in both sectors in the absence of anti-price gouging laws. Discuss how these quantities differ from those that result from implementing such laws. Without the anti-price gouging laws, the demand curve for the entire market, D, in panel C, is the horizontal sum of the demand curves in the two sectors. The supply curve S intersects the total demand curve D at E, where the equilibrium price is P and the quantity is Q. In sector 1, the equilibrium quantity is Q1. In sector 2, the equilibrium quantity is Q2. The sum of Q1 and Q2 is Q. In sector 2, or the uncovered sector, The quantity Q2 is smaller than that when the anti-price gouging laws are present. In the uncovered sector, the equilibrium price is lower in the presence of the laws in neighboring covered areas. So, the quantity in the uncovered sector is larger when the law is present, although the area is not affected by the law directly. On the contrary, the quantity in the covered sector is higher without the anti-price gouging laws. In the case of the laws, the total quantity is smaller and the uncovered sector has a higher quantity. So the covered sector must have a lower quantity. In a word, compared to the presence of the anti-price gouging laws, the total quantity and the covered sector's quantity are higher, and the uncovered sector's quantity is lower without the laws. Let's solve exercise 6.2. The market for peaches is competitive. The market has two types of demanders: consumers who eat fresh peaches and canners. If the government places a binding price ceiling only on peaches sold directly to consumers, what happens to prices and quantities of peaches sold for each use? The market for consumers is the covered sector. The market for canners is the uncovered sector. The market equilibrium without the price ceiling is E1. With the price ceiling only on peaches sold directly to consumers, the combined demand curve is D2 with two kinks. The new equilibrium is E2. The new equilibrium price falls from P to P bar. The new equilibrium quantity falls from Q1 to Q2. At the price of P bar, the uncovered sector's equilibrium is EU, where the quantity is QUD. The covered sector's equilibrium is EC, where the quantity is Q bar. There is a shortage in the covered sector. Let's answer exercise 6.3. A central city imposes a rent control law that places a binding ceiling on the rent that a landlord may charge for an apartment. The suburbs of the city do not have rent control. What happens to the rental prices in the suburbs and to the equilibrium number of apartments in the total metropolitan area, in the city and in the suburbs? Without the rental price ceiling in the city, the total demand curve is D1, and the market equilibrium is E1, where the equilibrium price is P and the quantity is Q1. With the rental price ceiling in the city, the total demand curve becomes D2 with two kinks. The new equilibrium is E2, where the equilibrium rental price falls from P to P bar, and the number of apartments in the total metropolitan area falls from Q1 to Q2. The rental price in the uncovered sector is also P bar because people can move freely between the city and suburbs. The number of apartments in the suburbs, the uncovered sector, is QUD, which is higher than that without the rent ceiling. The number of apartments in the city, the covered area, is Q bar, which is smaller than that without the rent ceiling. In a word, the rental price falls, the number of apartments in the total metropolitan area and in the city falls. but the number of apartments in the suburbs rises. There's a shortage of apartments in the city. In the long run, when more people move from city to suburbs, the suburbs rental price will go up, and the number of apartments there will become even higher. Let's solve exercise 6.4. Initially, electricity was sold in New York and in other states at a competitive single price. Now, suppose that New York restricts the quantity of electricity that its citizens can buy. So what happens to the price of electricity and the quantity sold in New York and elsewhere? Without the quantity restriction in New York, the total demand curve is D1, the horizontal sum of the demand curves in the covered sector New York and in the uncovered sector the other states. The market equilibrium is E1, where the equilibrium price is P1 and the equilibrium quantity is Q1. With the restrictions in New York, the total demand curve becomes D2 with a kink. The new equilibrium is E2, where the new price falls to P2 and the quantity falls to Q2 in the total market. At a lower price, the equilibrium quantity in the uncovered sector, the other states, rises to QU2. In a word, the equilibrium price falls. The quantity in New York falls because of the quantity restriction. The quantity in the entire market also falls, but by a smaller size because the quantity in other states rises. Let's find answers to the last exercise. A competitive industry with an upward sloping supply curve sells QH of its product in its home country and QF in a foreign country. So the total quantity it sells is Q equals QH plus QF. No one else produces this product. The shipping cost is 0. Determine the equilibrium price and quantity in each country. Now, the foreign government imposes a binding quota, Q tilde, which is smaller than QF at the original price. What happens to prices and quantities in both the home and the foreign market? We solve the problem in 2 steps. In the first step, we determine the equilibrium without the quota. Without the quota in the foreign market, the total demand and supply curves are the horizontal sums of the demand curves and the supply curves in the 2 markets. The market equilibrium is E1, where the equilibrium price is P and the quantity is Q. Q equals QF plus QH. QF and QH are the quantities in the 2 markets. In the second step, we determine the equilibrium with the quota. With the quota in the foreign market, the demand curve in the foreign market ends at Q tilde, which creates a kink in the total demand curve, D2. The new equilibrium is E2, where the price falls to P2 and the quantity falls to Q2. At a lower price in the uncovered sector, the home market, the quantity becomes QH2. In the covered sector, the foreign market, the quota raises the price to P2. In a word, the total fall in quantity is not as big as in the foreign market because the quantity increase in the home market partially offsets the decrease in the foreign market. I hope the solutions help you better understand microeconomics. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel and continue watching other videos on economics, econometrics, and data. See you in other courses. Take care. Thank you for watching this video and subscribing to my YouTube channel. See you next time.